Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Very, very delighted that you are on board watching these videos as help towards your challenging WSET courses. Challenging, but fun, hopefully. And I have a special guest for this video to help me go through the finer points. It's Mark Pygott. Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm good, Jimmy.
You're a real asset to have here for all the students that are embarking on this big D3 unit, which is a sizable chunk of their studies, and certainly around examination technique. Many of the people watching this will know that they've followed on probably with a lot of my videos, which is all the content, but of course there needs to be putting that content to good use, all that knowledge to good use in terms of understanding things like WSET, timing, command verbs. So we'll go through those, and it'd be great to get your input into those as well. Okay, let's take a look at the question on Campania, Mark. So we are going to be talking about not one of these even split questions. This has got different weightings. Important, right, to understand those weightings?
Absolutely. You cannot, if you enter this question with only a smattering of knowledge about Campania, and you really don't know instantly what those three indigenous grape varieties are, because there are 60% of the marks attributed to the describing the characteristics of those three varieties and the DOCG wines that they make, then you cannot pass this question. So do not do it.
And I think you and I have had conversations around this before, Mark, where we've talked about being drawn in by the romanticism of a topic, and you go, "Oh, Campania! Yes, I love Campania. I visited there once." And then, yeah, if you can't think about that middle component, that middle question, you may struggle. And not equally, but to a smaller percentage, that last one as well. Not everybody has a sort of a commercial, economical brain to them. I know that's actually one of the areas I struggle with the most, and it might be something that students completely have a blank on, right? Would you expect that last section?
I hope I don't say the wrong thing in saying this, Jimmy. I think that I find, when I do some marking of sort of test papers, not the real thing, but for the Master of Wine, we have a lot of questions on commercial positioning. And it's amazing how many students continue, as far as I'm concerned, to completely miss the point about, like you said, that almost the romance of wine is definitely there. But the actual application of the commercial realities of trying to sell, potentially one of these varieties in different parts of the world is completely missing. So yeah, I think it's something to be absolutely focused on, when not just for when you do the business section within the diploma, but you need to be linking that always with everything that you look at throughout this course of study. Just in the same way that, I think when was it first introduced, Jimmy? Is it in level 2 or is it in level 1? Where, we talk about style, quality, and price.
It begins in level 2, but level 3 is the understanding comes through.
Right. So, I mean, as soon as you bring price into it and therefore recognize that wine is a commodity, without wanting, I love wine, but let's be honest about what it also is. We need to sell it, otherwise, there is no industry. You have to have some understanding of the commercial situation. And so please put some time and effort into thinking about what that means, because these questions are important.
And also, Mark, as you mentioned, it's not completely just off your own impetus to do this. You do a whole unit on wine business, right? You do it on D2. So there should be some catalyst behind you to push you in that direction, but you should also have experience in at least attempting this. Now, just to sort of quantify, though, not every question in the examination will have a commercial aspect. There are questions which are just on sort of grape growing focus, for example, but it will certainly bode well for you if you have some experience in terms of answering those questions. And Mark, as always, at this point, we're going to ask students at home to have a go themselves. Now look at the weighting there, 20, 60, 20. We're roughly saying that big section, that 60%, should be somewhere around 21, 22 minutes of your answer, because remember, it's a 40-minute question, 5 minutes for planning. So you're going to be doing the lion's share in that middle bit, and then sort of 7-ish minutes or so for the other 2 sections. Really important that you practice with these different weighting ones, because the same again, I can imagine that a student gets into this, and grape growing, they start to get it to the 10-minute mark because they're writing about all the stuff they firmly know about volcanoes, and they've probably even written about Pompeii in 79 AD, and they've got all these things going on, and before you know it, it's eating into your time of that second section. That would be right. Do you think about sort of 20, 21 minutes for that middle, and then of course 7-ish for the other 2?
I think so. I mean, the only thing I would say, no, I agree. The only thing I would say is that you only have to talk about 3 things really in that described section, in that middle section. You know, you're talking about 3 varieties and where they're grown and the styles of wine that they produce. If you know them and you're not fishing around for that information because you know it,
yeah,
I don't think the answer is particularly long. I think the marks here are because you know it, and you know the styles of the wine, and you know those 3 DOCGs. Those are the marks right there. If you answer that incorrectly, you don't know the varieties, and you don't know the DOCGs. It doesn't matter how much time you spend on it; you're not going to pass.
And
so,
if you as an examiner, Mark, it's kind of a clear cut, isn't it? It's not one of these kind of vague ones where, as an examiner myself, it's when you have to mark papers which are a little bit more sort of cerebral, and it gets, you know, a little bit more complex. With this one, it is exactly that. You know, if they've only got 2 out of 3, then you know you're only going to be giving them, you know, 2/3 of the marks, right, if possible. And that's quite nice as an examiner. You have quite a kind of a system in place. Okay, so please pause, have a go. See you momentarily. Well, before we do talk about our answers and the command verb, Mark, let's talk a little bit about a very short overview from the examiners. And it's very much talking about what we've previously mentioned. Interestingly, though, very few attempted the question. So maybe they were sort of listening to what we were just saying, not linking it exactly, but they had some idea in their mind. They're like, damn it, I can't remember one of those 3 grape varieties, so I can't answer this, which will be a very sensible approach, right, to then move on. So possible big reasoning behind that. Maybe Campania doesn't have the amount of attention and draw it should have around the world, but I think it's the previous more than the latter. And candidates that knew the subject performed very strongly because, yes, they know that information, and attempted with any shortfall in regional knowledge were exposed, and they did it poorly, as we've mentioned before. So describe is the first part here, Mark. So it's saying describe the grape growing environment, and then the second one is also describe the characteristics. Would you talk about describe, how you approach a describe, because there are 2 questions coming up, or would you like to go straight into the example to help with that?
No, I just think when you're asked to describe, the nice thing about that is really it's almost asking you to make a bit of a list. It's not asking you to really demonstrate a huge amount of understanding and critical thinking. It's asking you to list the things about whatever it's asking you about. So in this case, the growing environment. So when you're describing that, you're just saying, oh, well, in this part, it's like this, and in this part, it's like that. It's not very complex. But if you don't know it, then you run into big problems because it's a fairly simple answer, but you have to have that answer because, like you said, Jimmy, there isn't a lot of wiggle room here. You either know it or you don't know it. And if you don't know it, then you can't score the marks.
And so describe being sort of listing those factual things, as it mentions there. Beyond that, what would be much more kind of I mentioned the word cerebral again, more thoughtful answers. There's command verb with things like analyze, right? And what other ones are there? I can't off the top of my head. Analyze.
Well, I suppose a part of the analyze, it's almost like explain as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is doing the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go into the grape growing environment of Campania then. We keep the describe command verb up there just so you have reference to it as well. And as Mark mentioned, this is about giving those facts about the area. Remember, I've not put up much here on the slide because we're looking at about 7 minutes. It's not a long time. So, Mark, everything okay here, do you think?
I think so. I think so. I think the only thing, I mean, I know it is divided here into those kind of higher inland areas, and then and the change in soil type. But I think it's the altitude there that is the big deal, because of the cooling influence of that and the diurnal range effect of that. And then obviously we have certain varieties which are happy up there and they're less happy down by the coast. Mm-hmm. And then that, the alluvial deposits around Benevento, and some of the varieties that we find there, again, change significantly. So again, you can see why not many people attempted this question, Jimmy. But all I'm saying is that when you're describing the growing environment, you can't just say it's a warm Mediterranean climate, and not then move a little bit deeper into the answer and reference the fact that we're clearly in this mountainous state, like almost every state in Italy is a mountainous state. There are going to be different areas in which grapes are grown, and therefore the environment must change, probably quite dramatically. And if you fail to recognize that, then again, it becomes quite hard to score well.
I like with this as well that there are techniques that can help you remember key facts. And for me, with this being, once again, working with geography, it's about understanding that you have the Bay of Naples, you have Napoli, you have Vesuvius, and then that's, of course, going to help me understand the geology in place here, talking about a lot of those volcanic sands, which you find. So often there are different ways that people remember this, but I'd be drawing maps and understanding the location, drawing big mountains and volcanoes and so on. I've thrown in something in at the bottom here, which is incorrect, because I'd like to sort of throw it in there in terms of there are things you could go in to include, but not necessarily should be there, because this is the grape growing environment. Would you think around vine training, like the tree system, or are you keeping it just the climate, weather, and geology in this part?
I think so. I think if you knew that and you felt that somehow mitigated or amplified a particular situation which was beneficial, to the growing environment that the vine is experiencing, then there's no harm in mentioning it. But I think we're really talking about, for me, climate, weather, soil, those sort of things.
Yeah, the initial things.
For access to the remaining video and lots more exclusive video content with hundreds of tutor-led videos, please visit the Wine with Jimmy e-learning platform and sign up today. Cheers!